Okay, so can adults learn faster than children? Conventional wisdom says no, but I say sometimes, and in this video I'm going to explain why I think that is. So something I hear a lot is, I thought I was too old to do X, where X is some kind of skill, and too old can mean anything from about 16 to about 70. And honestly, I get that. Learning anything new can be quite intimidating, and the older and more comfortable you get with the stuff you already know, the harder it can feel to get back into a beginner's mindset. But also I think there's just a perception that learning is easier when you're young, and that by not learning something as a kid, you've missed out on a golden opportunity to get really good really fast at something that really interests you. So I don't think that's true, and in this video I'm going to address the 3 biggest perceived advantages I think kids have over adults, and how you can address or get around them. Okay, so first, neuroplasticity probably is the hardest of these 3 things to get over. Technically, it's the ability of your brain to change both its form and its function in response to inputs on what's going on around it. And it's pretty well accepted that your brain is at its most plastic when you're a child, and is really malleable and susceptible to a whole different range of inputs and changing very quickly. What's changed is that until about a decade or so ago, many scientists thought that neuroplasticity basically stopped after about age 25, which meant that for lifelong learning it was all downhill after your mid-20s. But new research pretty much contradicts this. We now know that the brain is very much capable of change and neuroplasticity throughout its life. It's true that children's brains are more plastic and we do lose neurons as we age, but it's not all downhill. The adult brain can still create new neuronal connections, and there can be changes on our white matter and the connections between neurons that allow them to communicate more effectively. Most important of all though, there's quite a lot of evidence to suggest that things like physical activity, good nutrition and getting enough sleep can affect neuroplasticity in a very positive way. So the good news is, just by staying healthy, you're giving yourself the best possible chance at keeping your brain plastic and malleable and open to learning. Okay, next is unlimited time and focus. And I've put these things together because they're both really important, but they also both sort of go hand in hand. Because the thing is, when you're a kid, you do just tend to have more free time than you do as an adult. And that lends itself to this kind of hyper focus, sometimes called the rage to master, where you can get into one thing and practice it really, really obsessively. Unfortunately for me, the things that I hyper-focused on as a kid aren't really the things that interest me now. I got really into painting Warhammer figurines, I got pretty good at Street Fighter 2, and I got really good at juggling, which you can see more about in this video. Taking myself as an example, these days I have a job and a child and a whole bunch of commitments. So on a really good day, I get about 2 hours to myself, and on a bad day, I probably get about 20 minutes. My 5-year-old goes to school for about 6 hours a day and gets loads of holiday, and if he wanted to spend the rest of the time just playing piano, that would be totally fine with me. He would probably get really good at it. So yeah, that's a huge advantage that kids have, and it would be crazy to pretend otherwise. You have less spare time and more demands on your focus and attention than most kids, and somehow you're gonna have to work around that. So how do you do that? So the first thing I'd suggest is what's called a time audit, because it's actually pretty easy to tell yourself you have no spare time until you look at a typical day and realize that you spend 20 minutes of it browsing the Netflix queue, not watching anything, or 10 minutes composing a Twitter response to somebody who doesn't really deserve any of your time. And so in a time audit, you record and analyze how you spend your spare hours and minutes throughout the day, cut out the bad stuff or the unnecessary stuff, and try and make space for the stuff you really want to focus on. You can either do this with a notebook or a spreadsheet, but either way, what I would suggest is keeping track of your activities as you do them, because you're never going to be honest about what you've done at the end of the day if you aren't writing it out as you spend 10 minutes here and there on social media. Another thing that I think is really useful is to use electronic tools where you can to keep tabs on stuff like social media use and video games. So YouTube has its own tools for built-in time tracking. Other social media platforms have apps that will let you do the same thing. A great thing you can use for video games is the parental controls. On my Switch, it tracks everything that everyone plays on every different user account, so I know if I've been playing Cuphead for an hour. You can track either your work or your leisure or both. Personally, I've got the most control over my leisure. I don't have a lot of control over my working hours, so I just track that. And you can track for as long as you like. I would suggest at least a minimum of 3 days, so you've got kind of a good average, but anything up to a week is great. And once you've done your audit, it really is up to you what kind of changes you make to how you spend your time. But just seeing how much time you're spending on stuff that doesn't really matter can be hugely influential in how you approach your life. I realized that after my boy goes to school, I would often sit down to check my emails before it was time to start work, and I would spend 15 minutes on social media that I really could have been using getting in a nice little technical workout on piano. 15 minutes is enough to get a decent little practice session in. And in terms of focus, the advantage you have over many kids is that you're going to have a better understanding of what works in terms of general practice and what works specifically in the field that you're interested in improving at, and you can kind of base your practice off that. As a kid, you're probably either doing your own thing, using trial and error, maybe not in the best targeted way, or you're listening to a teacher and hopefully they're good, but they might not be. As an adult, you have to take responsibility for your own practice, and at the very minimum, I would say it's a great idea to understand the principles of purposeful or deliberate practice. The best starting point for that is definitely reading Anders Ericsson's Peak. The short version is you need to approach every session with specific measurable goals. You should be focused on improvement during practice. You should be receiving immediate feedback on your performance, and you must be slightly outside your comfort zone. I've talked more about this in another video. And then advantage 3 to learning as a kid is that everyone is nice to you. And this is something I didn't really think about until I was teaching my own child to read. But just think about what it would be like for a second if you were able to learn another language the way most kids learn their first language. You start with really easy words and everyone's constantly pointing out objects for you, repeating those words like dozens or even hundreds of times. Nobody cares if you make mistakes. Everyone talks to you really slowly, and everyone will correct you and be nice to you all the time. Here's a secret. You can make that happen as an adult too. Kids are adorable, they're usually enthusiastic about learning new things, and watching things click for them is really good fun. So everyone wants to teach them. Because here's the thing, you might not be that adorable, but there are certainly things you can do to make yourself the kind of person who people love to teach. The absolute baseline is to be friendly, say please and thank you a lot, and just be generally enthusiastic and excited about learning new things. The next step up from that is to ask questions like a kid, which basically means not being embarrassed to ask something that you think is stupid or obvious to other people. I teach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and the people who get good the fastest are the ones who are prepared to go, look, I have no idea what to do in this position. I'm not sure what a good strategy is. Can you make a suggestion? Or the ones who after you tap them out go, okay, can you show me either now or later what you just did and what I should have been doing instead of the thing that got me tapped out? Because those are the people I can help, unlike the people who just kind of tough it out, snarl at me after they get tapped and never learn anything new, or certainly learn a lot more slowly. And then the final tier of learning like a kid, and you'll understand this if you have kids, is that you want to try and explain your understanding to someone else, and then they can correct you on what you're not getting. So this happens to me all the time. If my kid comes up to me and goes, bees eat flowers, then I can go, okay, we're getting there, but here's what else you need to know about bees. Or maybe we just look it up together. And that is how I think you can learn faster as an adult than you might as a kid. You take care of your brain, you audit your time and focus, and you get everyone to be nice to you. Go learn something.